Well, hello there, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see what we got. Okay. Well, okay. Harold, if you're coming for Baba Basra, you missed it. But you're going to get Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Okay. So, first of all, our introductions. You know, we all know what's going on here. We're involved in a wonderful 48-hour Torah-thon. We started off with Rabbi Minkowitz last night, followed by Rabbi Vakrat. And both of those got some great attendance. Rabbi Dickstein picked up this morning at 4 a.m. And we've been going pretty much straight all the way through with a little break for Shacharis. But we've been going straight all the way through. And here we are. So we've been on since Rabbi Dickstein started at 4 a.m. It's now 9 a.m. And people have been learning Torah. He wasn't learning by himself either. Amazingly enough, people actually came on and joined him in learning. So it's super experience. If you came on through the website, then you saw that there were donate buttons, and you have an opportunity to donate to support the shul. And I just want to make a little plug for the shul. You know, many people do fundraisers. A very popular form of fundraisers are banquets. Institutions do banquets. They put in these big, huge, lavish banquets. And when they do that, you know, I know, because I've done banquets, and I know that a chunk of money goes to pay for the banquet. I mean, everyone gets a dinner for that, but there's all kinds of logistics and things that go on. And by the time it's all done, with all the invitations and all the food and the paying for the location and all that type of stuff, a lot of money is spent on a lot of things that are not tzedakah oriented. They're spent to help raise tzedakah, but they are not themselves tzedakah. Well, Congregation Ariel is offering you something that will be an opportunity to enrich yourselves, to enrich you through Torah learning. So as a fundraiser, we're actually giving something more than just dinner. So we're giving something that really is what we stand for, what we represent, what we're all about. And what we're all about is learning Torah, teaching Torah, learning Torah. So we're giving the community an opportunity to do more of what we do. And in turn, we hope that the community supports this endeavor and will enable us to keep doing more and more and more of that. So my thanks go out to the people at Raise Giving. That's Avram Chazanov, who has put up our website and is handling all of that background. Josh Needle, who is with us as we speak from Broad Spectrum Services LLC.com, making sure that all this is technically works. And I want you to know how important that is, because I wrecked everything this morning and Josh came along and put it all back together. That really saved the day from his remote location. So we really appreciate that. And we've got our staff at Shul, which is Debbie Kalvarisky and Basia Heinzelman, worked very, very hard. As a matter of fact, if you're looking at my picture, you see the little name down there in the corner. That's me, Debbie Kalvarisky. And so they've been really working around the clock to make all this happen. And we've got a long list of donors. And I have yesterday's list, a printout of yesterday's list of donors. But I know for a fact that that list has grown. And I hope that sometime during the day, I'll be getting an updated list and I'll be able to thank all the many donors that are supporting the shul and supporting the project. So without further ado, I'm going to open my Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Yeah. So we're going to actually turn ahead to, some of us have been learning this already. So we're going to turn ahead to chapter 67. I'm sorry, no. Chapter Siman 101, page 67. And this is very important. The law regarding preparing on the first day of Yom Tov for the second day of Yom Tov, or for a weekday. And the reason why this is very important is because this is this year. So here's the background. And this is what we're looking at because it's very relevant to this year. Coming up this week, not even this year, this week, we have the holiday of Shavuos is coming up. So on Shabbos, we are not allowed to cook or prepare food. There's a number of prohibitions, 39 prohibited activities. Guess what, folks? Here we are. I am so honored because I have just been joined. First of all, now we have two people from Israel have just joined our class. One of them is in Beersheba, and the other is in Kfar Etzion, just south. Kfar Etzion, I guess, if she keeps going straight down the road, she'll get to Beersheba. So we have Beersheba and Kfar Etzion, and we just were joined by my sister. My very own sister came to this class. What an honor. And if my sister would actually turn on her video camera, I could actually even see her. That would be pretty cool. Okay, there she is. Hi. How do you like that? Okay. That's my sister, Carmel Danziger. And in comes Deborah, whoever Deborah is. Happy to have her here. Hello, Deborah. Welcome. Good to have you on this morning. So we are studying, we're going to be learning about what do you do when Yom Tov is 2 days, or like in this case, in Israel, they don't have 2 days of Yom Tov, but this year they do in essence, because today, this week, coming up this week, Friday is the first day of Yom Tov for us, and then it immediately goes into Shabbos. So we have 2 holiday days, one right after the other. So that's the laws that we're going to be looking at right now. So just to explain the background. On Yom Tov, on Shabbos, I should say, we're not allowed to prepare food. We're not allowed to cook. We're not allowed to transfer fire. 39 prohibited categories that we're not allowed to do. But on Yom Tov, hang on just a second. Yeah, so on Yom Tov, we have different set of rules. On Yom Tov, we are allowed, the Torah tells us explicitly, that we are allowed to prepare for Shabbos, or we are allowed to prepare food, whatever we need to eat, we're allowed to prepare on Yom Tov. But for Yom Tov, you can only prepare for Yom Tov. So what do you do on Shabbos when Yom Tov comes out on Friday and you need to eat good hot food that's cooked and fresh on Shabbos? But if Friday is Yom Tov and you can't cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, you can only cook on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. You're not allowed to cook for any other day. You know, you have a special permission from the Torah to cook what you need for that day, but not for every other day. So what do you do? And especially this is an issue because once upon a time, they didn't have plastic. They did not have refrigeration. They didn't have all these things. So if you needed to prepare food on Wednesday for Shabbos, by the time you get to Shabbos, the food's not going to be good anymore. So what are you going to do? So that is the issue that we're going to be dealing with. And for the purposes of our discussion, we're not going to deal with Rosh Hashanah because Rosh Hashanah's got a little bit of a different set of rules to it. Okay, so so now there's a little bit more background we have here. According to the Torah, the day that is observed of Yom Tov depends on when the new month begins. So in Israel, the new month when they sighted the new moon, based on the testimony of witnesses and so on and so forth. So since the beginning of the new month was determined on a month-to-month basis, so people who are living in countries that were far away from Israel would not know when they determined when the holiday is. So therefore, they knew based on their calculations, a lunar month is 29 and a half days long. So therefore, every 29 or 30 days is going to be a new month. But they were never really sure exactly, only they had to wait and see when the court determined which of the 2 days was going to be the new month. So for people who lived in the diaspora, who lived very far away from Jerusalem, and they were afraid that by the time the holiday rolled around, they still wouldn't know when the new month was determined. So they adopted a system whereby they would observe 2 days of Yom Tov, and that way they know for sure it's one or the other of them. It's always going to be one day or the other of those 2 months, because it has to do with the fact that when we have a 29 and a half day lunar cycle, we always want to start the new month in an evening, the beginning of a Jewish day, which is sundown. Lunar cycle, you might have a month that ends, let's say, midday. If you don't start that new month until a half a day later, the new cycle is already a half day old. When you get to the end of that month, it's already going to be ending a half day even earlier. So this is why you could somehow have 29-day months or 30-day months. Without getting too much into the details of that, but sometimes we have 29-day months, sometimes 30-day months. This led to the confusion the people in the diaspora needed to know. Was last month a 29 or 30? They needed to wait and find out which one the court in Jerusalem had determined. They were not always able to get the right information, and therefore they started observing 2 days because they knew it was either one or the other. The problem will be, what do you do with food preparation from one day to the other? And similarly, what do you do with food preparation when you go into Shabbos? Okay, so now, this is where we start with the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. And he says as follows. So those of you that have Kitzur Shulchan Aruchs, I know we have a group that meets at this hour, usually, 2 days a week, and we learn Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. So some of those fellows are here with us this morning. So they have the books. And those of you that have the books, we're in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We are in chapter Siman 101. And that is page 68. Page 68, if you've got this version of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. If you don't, it's in Siman 101, paragraph 1. And here we go. It says, Kol malachos hamutoros lasosam b'yom tov. Any malachos that you're permitted to perform on Yom Tov, Now, we learned about that earlier, that those things that have to do with food preparation. Those things that have to do with food preparation, you're allowed to do on Yom Tov. So anything that you're allowed to do on Yom Tov, zehu dafka letzorech oso hayom. Even though the Torah allowed people to prepare food on Yom Tov, they only allowed people to prepare food. The Torah only allowed people to prepare food on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. That means you can't cook on Yom Tov to be eaten later on in the week. If Yom Tov is on Wednesday, you can't cook Thursday day's lunch or Thursday night's dinner on Yom Tov. You can only cook for that day. The Torah, the reason for that is Yom Tov is a celebration. And let me take a moment to talk about that. So the idea is on Yom Tov that as opposed to Shabbos, Shabbos is a holy day. It's a spiritual day. And it's a day that God very much wants us to remove ourselves from physical concerns. Now, of course, we will enjoy spiritual things better if you're in a nicer physical environment. Shul is a much nicer spiritual experience when the air conditioning is set just right. Okay? People can become very unspiritual if the air conditioning is not set right, as I have learned. So that's why I keep my eye in the shul. I keep my eye very, very much on the thermostat. The thermostat is a certain guy whose forehead I look at. When I see beads of sweat on his forehead, I know that it's too hot in shul. He's my thermostat. Okay? When people start getting too hot in shul, they're not happy. So, of course, in order to have a spiritual experience, you need physical comfort. So Shabbos is a spiritual day. But we do eat, we sleep more on Shabbos, things like that. But we're not allowed to engage in any physical activities, even for the purpose of enhancing the Shabbos. Certain physical activities, but things that are creative activities, we're not allowed to engage in. Yom Tov, holidays, like the coming holiday of Shavuos, is a different creation entirely. So Yom Tov is what we call Chatzi LaHashem. Half of it is dedicated to God, the Chatzi Lachem. But God gives the other half of the day to you, to y'all, okay, to the people. Yom Tov is meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be enjoyed with good food and drink and socializing and nice smells and things like that. Visiting and all those things. The Shabbos is a more sedentary, cerebral, spiritual day. And Yom Tov is a half day. Okay, so Yom Tov is half to us and half to Hashem. Well, if it's half to us, that means we have to have good meals. And that means that we want to have the freshest, best food available, which is why the Torah allows us to prepare food on Yom Tov, for Yom Tov, but only for Yom Tov, because otherwise you'd be doing work and for something other than Yom Tov, that would be a degradation to Yom Tov. That would be taking this day, this holiday day, and spending your time doing things. You know, you can imagine, it's like going on vacation with the family. You're on holiday, and you're sitting in front of the computer doing work. That's not right. When you're on holiday, you're on holiday. When you're at work, you're at work. So when you're on holiday, when it's Yom Tov, you're allowed to prepare food so that everyone can be enjoying themselves to the max. However, if you'd be preparing food for some other day, That would be a degrading to Yom Tov because you're using Yom Tov as a work day for some other day. That's not right. Now, aval hachin miyom echad liyom sheni, but to prepare food on the first day for the second day, even on Rosh Hashanah, fil Rosh Hashanah, umikol shekain liyom chol, or to prepare food for a weekday, asur, it is prohibited. So to use the day of Yom Tov to be cooking food for the next day of Yom Tov, even though you say, well, they're both days of Yom Tov, but the second day of Yom Tov is not really the same. It's a different level of sanctity, and it would be inappropriate to have people to waste the Yom Tov doing work on that day, even for the next day of Yom Tov, even though the next day is Yom Tov. So here we have an issue. We're allowed to prepare food, cook food on Yom Tov. However, we're not allowed to cook food on one day of Yom Tov for another day of Yom Tov. And as we're going to find out, that we're really not allowed to cook food on one day of Yom Tov, even for Shabbos. Even for Shabbos. So that's what's coming up this week. Friday is Yom Tov, and it's followed by Shabbos. And if you'd be cooking on Friday for Shabbos, you're using Yom Tov as the prep day for Shabbos. And Yom Tov shouldn't be used as a prep day for something else. Yom Tov is its own special holiday. So what do we do? As I mentioned earlier, this puts us in a little bit of a bind, because how do I prepare my Shabbos food? Like, for example, on Shabbos, I want to eat cholent. Well, cholent usually cooks overnight. If I put it on Thursday, I can't put it on Friday night because that's already Shabbos. It's too late. If I put it on Thursday, then I'm using Yom Tov to prepare for Shabbos. If I put it on Wednesday, it'll probably be nothing but charcoal by the time I get to Shabbos. So that's my problem. So what do we do? However, im hu tzarich lavash bishvil hayom. One thing you can do is as follows. If you need to cook for that very day, mutter lo lakachas kedera yoser gedola, you can use a bigger pot, and fill it up with meat or whatever, more than you would need for that day. Even though you don't need that much that day, and then what you could have left over for that evening or the next day. So let me give you an example. It is Yom Tov, and I want to have lunch. And at lunch on Yom Tov, I want to have potatoes, mashed potatoes. So I put potatoes in the pot, and I cook them up on Yom Tov for lunch. How many potatoes do I need for lunch on Yom Tov? Let's say 10. I am allowed to put in 20 in the pot and keep the extra 10 for tomorrow for Shabbos. That I would be allowed to do. Now, why am I allowed to do that? Because even though I don't intend to eat it on the first day, the fact is I'm only doing one act of cooking. I'm putting one pot on the stove. The pot doesn't care if I originally poured 20 potatoes into it or 10 potatoes into it. I open up the sack of potatoes, and instead of just putting in 10, I dumped in the whole sack of 20. Okay, I didn't do much difference. And then putting it on the stove to cook it, I had to do that anyway because I had to cook for today. So while you're cooking for today, you can add on some extra for tomorrow. Now, the okay, so let's continue on. Vidavka, this is specifically Bitavshil B'Kedera Mutter. This is only going to work on food in a pot. Because like I said, when you dump it into the pot, it doesn't matter how much you're dumping in. And there's a rule here maybe we have some cooks that could tell me otherwise. I'm just going to accept the rule as the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says, because I don't know too much about cooking. But the rule is that mipnei shetavshil mutam yoser kishemizbashel harbi basar biachad. Pots of food taste better when large amounts are cooked together at the same time. So therefore, not only are you not doing an extra action, you're also really enhancing the food that you're cooking right now, because it'll taste better because there's more food in the pot. Like meat, for example, more pieces of meat in the pot will make all the pieces of meat taste better. Now, I don't know if I can't testify to that. That's what it says here. And I can't testify to it. Maybe if we have a cook here, they could chime in and say, if you've got something to contribute to that, I don't know. Now, if it's really enhancing the taste of the pot, you can actually add it after the pot's already on the fire. If it's not going to enhance the taste, then you'd have to rely on the first method that I said, which is, who cares how many pieces you put in before you put it on the fire? You're still only putting one pot of food on the fire. Now, another condition. All of this is bilvad shelo yomer b'peh. You're not supposed to specifically say shehamoser yeh letzorech halayla, that I'm doing extra so it'll be ready for me for tomorrow. That's not nice. To make a point of the fact that you're putting in extra for the next day of Yom Tov is not appropriate. Ela yavashel kodem astam, yavashel stam, just cook it plain. Just cook it plain. And now, even if you did say it, even if you said it, it's okay, but it's not really right to say, I'm cooking this, I'm adding extra potatoes to the pot, so I'll have food left over for the next day. That's not appropriate. Aval b'shar ma'acholim, with other types of food, where more doesn't necessarily help. Like, for example, if you're cutting up, if you're mashing potatoes, so mashing more potatoes doesn't enhance the food of the potatoes that are already there, then asur lahosif, then you can't do any extra for today, tomorrow. Like, for example, you want to eat mashed potatoes at lunch on Friday, first day of Yom Tov Shavuos this week, and you also want to have mashed potatoes for Shabbos. So on Yom Tov, you cooked all 20 potatoes in one pot. That's okay. Now you want to mash them. So you take out 10 potatoes and you mash them for today's lunch. You're not allowed to take out the other 10 and mash them for Shabbos lunch, because that would be an extra activity that's being done for no purpose of Yom Tov, because they're only going to be eaten on Shabbos. They don't enhance the flavor. It's this individual activity. You're not allowed to do that. If there is any extra burden, like you're doing extra work right now, mashing potatoes, not allowed to do it by adding anything additional. Now, so for example, let's say you have a barbecue. You're allowed to do a barbecue on Yom Tov. If you light the fire from a pre-existing flame, you can have barbecue on Yom Tov. So you're barbecuing your steaks up on Yom Tov, and you want to have another steak for Shabbos. You're not allowed to make another steak on Yom Tov for Shabbos, because just the act of placing it on the grill is an extra activity. And having more steaks on the grill at the same time does not enhance any of them anymore. So you are not allowed to add an extra piece. Now, perhaps what you can do is you might say that we're going to get to this in a minute, but I'll mention it now because it's relevant. If you don't know exactly how many steaks you're going to be eating, you can put on a whole bunch because you say, well, listen, maybe people are hungry and they might eat a lot of steaks. And if they don't eat all the steaks, okay, then I'll have leftovers. You could do that as long as it's possible that you might need the extras for that day of Yom Tov itself. Now, let's continue on to see base. Paragraph 2, which, by the way, you know, if you are watching this on the live stream, you cannot participate. You're just a passive audience. But if you are one of the 11 participants, 10 besides me, who have joined in here this morning, that means that you've got a mic, you got a camera, and you've got a mic, and you can use it. So if you want to ask, comment, add, subtract, go right ahead. That's what you got. That was the, that's what you gained by clicking on that button that said be an active participant.
All right, I've got a question.
There you go. Hello, how are you?
Very good. I always wonder about washing the dishes from Chag morning for Friday night. When can I wash the dishes?
That is a great question. So first of all, let me tell everyone that the voice that you just heard is my dear sister who's coming to you from Israel. Maybe you even saw her camera. I'm gonna switch over so that I can, there you go. Okay, now I can see her too. Okay. And by the way, Mark Straczynski, who's on here, I don't know, did you meet each other at
Yeah, I met Carmel last year.
Right. Right. So Mark came
Yeah,
to the show in the museum in Kfar Zion with a
That's
group
right.
from Atlanta.
right. Now I remember. I knew you looked familiar.
There you go. Okay, that's great. So anyway, so on Yom Tov, once it's Yom Tov, you can wash the dishes for Yom Tov, but you can't wash them on Yom Tov for Shabbos. So even though even though we are so there's a couple of issues that you might be able to utilize. So one of them is that if the dishes are sitting around on Yom Tov and they make the whole house, you know, the kitchen doesn't look nice and it's disruptive to everyone, then you could wash them to get them out of the way. But you're really not allowed to wash dishes from, otherwise you're not allowed to wash dishes from one day of Yom Tov to the next. And similarly from Yom Tov to Shabbos, even though that might mean that on Shabbos, you're gonna have to wash those dishes in cold water, whereas on Yom Tov, you're gonna wash them in hot water and it'll be an awful lot easier. So it's a big problem, but you're not allowed to use from one to the other.
It
But
also makes the Friday night meal later because you got to wash the dishes first before
Right,
and
that's right.
heat the food.
That's right. So you have one other way out, and that is you can wash the dishes and you could wash dishes if you don't have any other dishes and what they say is Dilma, perhaps in Aramaic, is mikla, they'll come in, orchim, guests might come in. So you could say, listen, people might come over and I'd need some plates or something to serve them, to offer them some food. and I don't have any clean plates. I don't have any serving. So I need to wash for that. But that has to be a little bit of a, there has to be a little bit of a possibility that that's really true. Another thing that people do is if the kids have to eat early. So if your kids are hungry and you're going to be serving them early, they can't stay up. Let's say the Friday night meal is going to start at 8:30, 9 o'clock. The kids already eat earlier. So you could wash the dishes because you need to serve them. And then you could, you could, have the extras left over. Okay, so let's get, we're going to get to some of this though. Let's read on, Sif Base, paragraph 2. Says, "Afilu davar she'eino malacha," even something which is not a malacha. Like it's not a creative activity that's prohibited. It's just work, like the washing the dishes that we were just talking about. It's not prohibited. You're going to do it according to permitted fashion, and it's just simply work. It's not transgressing any of the 39 malachos, but even if it's just work, and the example he brings is kagon lahavi mayim, to bring in water. Okay, you're gonna bring in water. So you got your pump. The pump is in the yard. It's all enclosed. It's all one domain. You got to go get water. In those days, you had to go out to the pump and get water. So I want in 2004, I guess it was. Yeah, 2004. In 2004, I went to Eastern Europe. And I was in Poland and I was in Belarusia. And actually not so much in Poland, hardly in Poland, but in Belarusia, which is like a country that's still living under the communists, the people, they had pumps in their front yards. And even in Poland, when I was in the town of Mir in Poland, they were the streets were all torn up and they were putting in plumbing. They were putting in fresh water pipes in the streets. This is in 2004. They were just putting in water in the houses. But up until then, and even while I was there, because it was still being installed, they had pumps. Everyone had pumps. And not only that, I was in a town in Belarusia where they went to the well. There was a lady, she was drawing water out of a well right in the middle of town. Now she had a fiberglass rope onto a plastic basket, a plastic bucket that said Home Depot on it, right? But she was filling her water from a well with a Home Depot bucket and a fiberglass rope, but still the water was coming out of a well. I mean, so he says here, when he uses his example of doing work on Yom Tov is go fetching the water, it's not just the time the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch was written like around 1860 or so, this book that we're reading. But, some of this stuff was relevant even recently. So doing Yom Tov, afilu yain l'kiddush al-Havdalah. Let's say you got to go down in the wine cellar and you got to bring up wine and you got to move around cases and crates and stuff like that for your kiddush. Also, lahachin, you're not allowed to prepare. So for example, if you want to go on Yom Tov, you say, well, I want to go down now because I know I'm going to need wine for tonight, Shabbos. Let's say Shabbos. Tonight I'm going to need a bottle of wine. And now there might be some light, like there's still a little light will be in the room where the wine is. And I know there's a whole bunch of boxes and crates in there, so I got to go in and move stuff around. Or just simply, I'll be able to see which wine I'm taking right now because there's some daylight in the room. But tonight, the room will be dark. So I want to go now on Yom Tov afternoon and go pick out my bottles of wine for tonight, for Shabbos. You're not allowed to do that because that is preparing, using Yom Tov to prepare for Shabbos. Even if it's literally just to pick out the bottle of wine, I want to drink this wine for Yom Tov, for Shabbos, if it's on Yom Tov. So you're not allowed to do that. Likewise, v'chein, Asur lahami, that's a neros b'menorah. You're not allowed to set up your candles in the candlestick, or l'sakin esapsilos ashoshios, or to arrange the wicks and everything like that. B'yom tov rishon l'tzorech halayla, for the first day going into the second day. Now this is going to be different for Shabbos, but for the first day going into the second day, you're not allowed to do it. Unless you're going to need it before nighttime. Let's say, for example, if it's getting dark later in the afternoon, if you need some light, then you can use it for Yom Tov. Or in honor of the shul. So in honor of the shul, you can light candles even during the day, because lighting candles in a shul is an honor, just to have lights lit in the shul, even though there's enough daylight and everyone can see what's going on. But just to have light in the shul, you can do that. So you can light it during the day for the nighttime. But, or for example, let's say I want to have light in a certain room. There's no light in the room, and I want to have light in the room. So if I want light in the room on Shabbos, I can light a candle on Yom Tov from another candle, take the light to that room and put the light there. As long as I do something, as long as I use that light right now on Yom Tov. So as long as I can find some use for it on Yom Tov, then I can leave it be there for the rest of Shabbos. But I have to somehow do something on Yom Tov. Okay, so now, so now there's a footnote here, and this talks about our situation. When either day of Yom Tov falls on a Friday, then the preparations for Shabbos are permitted on Yom Tov. And that is through the device that we call an Eruv Tavshilin. Now, Eruv Tavshilin is going to come up in the next Siman. So, every Friday you have to have your candles lit before sundown. And there's some other things you need to do. Whatever needs to be done before Yom Tov, you can do. So all of that is going to be done through the Eruv Tavshilin. Now, and that is, that brings us to really the next siman. So I want to skip the next 3 paragraphs, and we're going to skip trapping animals and harvesting fruit and dealing with milk that was milked by a guy on Yom Tov and all that. And we're going to go to the laws of Erev Tavshilin, which is what we want to get to. That's what we're going to be doing on Thursday. On Thursday day, we're going to be making an Erev Tavshilin. So let's turn ahead to chapter 102. So the issue is going to be for us, how do you, hang on, there we go. So the issue for us is going to be, how do you prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbos? So we're going to make the Erev Tavshilin. Now, how does this Erev Tavshilin work? So first I'm going to give you the overview, and then we'll actually get into the halachas. What we want to do is, we don't want to start cooking on Shabbos, on Yom Tov for Shabbos. But we have to, because otherwise we won't have any food for Shabbos. Now, if you can take care of all of this on the eve of Yom Tov, and you can use plastic and refrigeration and freezers and aluminum foil, fantastic. That's the way to do it. But if you can't do all those things, so then you do need to cook on Friday, because Thursday afternoon is going to be too far away. You're going to need to cook on Friday for Shabbos. So what do? So we don't want to just start cooking on Friday for Shabbos. That is too degrading to Yom Tov. So what we do is we start our cooking on Friday. The cooking that we're going to be doing on Friday for Shabbos, we started on Thursday afternoon. We start that cooking for Shabbos on Thursday afternoon. And then what we're allowed to do is we're allowed to continue cooking on Friday for Shabbos. But at least we didn't start cooking on Friday for Shabbos. So we've toned down the level to which we are using Yom Tov for Shabbos. That's one thing. And the other thing is we have the idea that I mentioned before, that there's always the possibility that some guests would come in the door and we'd need to have some fresh food to serve them. So that's another reason why I could cook on Yom Tov. Now, if I only had that reason by itself, then we wouldn't rely on that necessarily to cook. But what we call in halacha, but if we add that as a sniff, as a branch to a halachic decision, then we're allowed to do it. So the Erev Tefshilin is based on the following two things. Number one, we start the cooking process on Thursday. So therefore, we're not initiating on Friday, we're only adding to or continuing. So it's not as much of a abuse of Yom Tov. And number two is, we do need to cook on Yom Tov because maybe some guests would come in and we want to have fresh food to serve them. So the word Eruv means combination, mixing together. So what we're going to do is, we're going to start cooking on Erev Yom Tov. We're going to take an egg. We're going to take some cooked food and some baked food. We're going to start baking on Erev Yom Tov, and we're going to start cooking on Erev Yom Tov. And we're going to take a little bit of that cooked food and a little bit of that baked food. We're going to hold them up and say, this is the beginning of my Shabbos meal. This egg that I've just cooked and this piece of matzah or this challah that I've baked. This is the beginning of all my baking for Yom Tov, and this is the beginning of all my cooking for Yom Tov. And then we're going to put them aside. And on Friday, when we bake some more for Shabbos, we're now on Friday, when I go to do the rest of my cooking or baking, on Friday, then I'll say, now I'm going to continue that which I started on Thursday. I'm now going to continue. I'm not starting to cook, but I'm going to continue cooking. I'm going to mix together the foods that I'm making right now, together with the food that I already made from Erev Yom Tov. I'm going to mix the two of them together, and that's going to continue my meal, and that will be my Shabbos meal. Okay? So therefore, okay, so now one of the reasons why, so let me give you this. He has an important footnote here that lays out some background. And after we're done with this footnote, we're going to wrap up our learning of Erev Tefshilin. So he says here that, so there could be the cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos. If you prepare for your Shabbos food, it might even be a Torah prohibition. Even if you cooked, if you prepare the food on the Shabbos food on Yom Tov morning, then you could avoid a lot of this, because you could say, well, I'm preparing for my daytime Shabbos meal. But if you're doing it in the afternoon, that's when you're running into the problem. That's when you'll need this Erev Tefshilin. So, so if one could reasonably expect to use the food during the day, then you could do the cooking. But if it's later in the afternoon and you're cooking and you're not expecting any guests, it's really difficult to say that. But well, that's why we need the Erev Tavshilin. According to all opinions, the sages prohibited one to cook on Yom Tov even early in the day for the purpose of Shabbos. Even though the Torah might have allowed it, but the sages prohibited it. This decree was enacted to reinforce the prohibition of cooking on Yom Tov for a weekday, as people will now reason that if it's forbidden to cook for Shabbos or Yom Tov, it must certainly be forbidden to cook for a weekday. So that's why they prohibited it, even though you could say maybe Shabbos is of a higher level, but they prohibited it because they didn't want people cooking on one day for the next day, because the next thing you know, people are going to cook on Yom Tov for weekdays. Okay, so with that, we're going to wrap up our laws of Yom Tov. And I'm just going to tell you practically that you'll find this all in your Siddurim. As a matter of fact, if you have an Art Scroll Siddur, you need to take a cooked food and a baked food. Usually we take a hard-boiled egg because it keeps well, and a piece of matzah. You should put them together and actually lift them up and turn to, before you lift them up, you should probably turn to page 656. I'm sorry, 654. Yeah, page 654 if you have an Art Scroll Siddur, and you make a bracha. And it said, "Blessed are you, Hashem, who commanded us from the mitzvah of Eruv." Even though the rabbis are the ones that commanded us to do the mitzvah of Eruv, but the nonetheless, the Torah commanded the rabbis to make these enactments, so it's like a Torah commandment. And then you make the following declaration. You can say it, and you should say it in any language you understand. So you can say it in English. It's in Aramaic in Siddur. Probably not so many people understand Aramaic. So say it in English. And you say, through this Eruv, may we be permitted to bake, cook, insulate, kindle, flame, prepare, and to do anything necessary on the festival for the sake of the Shabbos. That's what you need to do sometime on Thursday afternoon. Then you should put aside that egg and matzah, or whatever to cook, the cooked and the baked food that you put aside. On the next day, do that on Thursday. On Friday, when you're cooking, you're adding to that. And on Shabbos, you should remember to eat it. If you didn't eat it, it's okay. But Shabbos, you should preferably eat that egg, since it was cooked for Shabbos, and eat that matzah. Okay, so we're going to stop here with our study of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. I'm going to thank a whole bunch of our sponsors for sponsoring this thing. And I want you to know that we've been having, I have to admit, and I'm the guy that thought of this whole idea. I am shocked at how fantastic the participation has been in these classes.
Сейчас перезвоню. Секунду.
It's been fantastic, really beautiful. Last night we had a huge kickoff. Rabbi Hershey Minkowitz was the opening class, and he had more than 52 people were in the Zoom, and another 25 or so, 27 people, I think, were watching on the live stream. So that was fantastic. Even this morning at 4 a.m., Rabbi Dickstein had people that were online with him participating, which is really beautiful. And we've been going straight all the way through. It's been wonderful. We've been having nice groups have been on the whole time. We're thanking all of our sponsors and all of our hosts. I see Kevin and Sheila are hosts, and the Davidoffs are hosts. The Crones are hosting. They've sponsored some of this. The Larimers are sponsors, the Pinchasovs, the Schroeders, the Schiffs, on and on and on. So many people, the Cohens, Dan and Kim Cohen, And it's just been beautiful. That's just a partial list, and the list is growing. And I'll ask all of you to help the list grow even more. So as you came through the ariel.raisegiving.com website, so if you can, stop for a moment and donate a few dollars or shekalim if you're calling from Israel, and that'll help us reach our goal of being able to keep the shul open and providing things to the community like this one that we're doing right now. Our thanks, as I'm telling at the top and bottom of every hour, thanks to our people at Raise Giving who are providing the website and a lot of technical help on that, processing donations and all that type of stuff. And to Josh Needle from Broad Spectrum Services, LLC.com, who is doing a great job. He's right here with us right now. Josh is emotionally holding my hand by putting his little, in the bottom of my screen, it says Josh on there, and I know he's there assisting, so that way he makes us feel comfortable. And I know that when I crash this whole thing down, like I did at 7:30 this morning, Josh came on and put us back up and we got up and running again. And I thought that at 7:30 I had just wrecked the whole thing, but now we're back on and we're going, so that's super. So anyway, at this point, I'm going to take out the Sefer Das Tevunos. And I'm going to share with all of you a few words about that Sefer, and then we're going to learn a little bit about good and evil.